I want to remind you today that it's part of the Evo atheist secular mindset to think that if they ever find life on any other planet, anywhere else in the universe, that'll prove the Earth's not special and there's no God, who we are the apple of his eye, and mankind being made in God's image is the crown of his creation and special, and that he cares about us and died for us and all of that. So they're constantly looking, and maybe not all of them are thinking they're going to trash Christianity and religion totally, but many of them are. When they felt they found the Mars rock with bacteria in it back in the 1980s, they said that in the 1990s, after it had been investigated, I mean, they found the rock in the 80s at the South Pole. Supposedly it fell off Mars. They found bacteria, microscopic. Really, it was cracks in the pyroxene matrix of the rock. But one Evo atheist secularist announced to the media, "This will be the end of organized religion on this planet." So there are some ready to pounce as soon as they find or prove, they think they prove life on other planets or even outside our solar system. Let's take a look at this article here about Mars. Methane is an organic molecule, but it can be inorganic because it's only CH4, a very small molecule. And they found methane geysers are released on Mars, and it's alone not a sign of life, as they admit. But 45 parts per billion is not very much methane. They're still thinking that since it's organic, maybe there's life on Mars. Ooh. Well, that'd be interesting. It'd be fun to find life on other planets, but I know what they're doing it for. Here's the Curiosity rover on Mars. And they're talking about things they found: 24 parts per billion, 0.65, 0.25 parts per billion. And they're talking about that there is something like this on Earth, and that would be the methane ices that we find under the ocean, actually, under the rocks layers. There's ice that contains methane in it, and maybe those things are also there on Mars. They said it could just be a geologic process, have nothing to do with biology. They do make a little tip of the hat to the Martian flood here, which they all believe that there was a worldwide flood on Mars. They just don't believe it could have happened on Earth. We believe it happened in both places as part of the judgment 4,366 years ago. And we call it Noah's flood here. Well, here's something else. You know, in the 1970s, Dwayne Gish and Henry Morris and the leaders in creation science flatly predicted the Mars rocks would be as clean and devoid of life and sterile as the moon rocks. And so far, that's been 100% true. But even if we do find bacteria on Mars, even NASA agrees, and I'll show you the quote down below, it could be that that's bacteria from Earth, that encapsulated in our upper atmosphere, could have been swept off the surface of our atmosphere by the solar wind from the sun and swept clean straight out into space. And if Mars got in the way, if its orbit intersected and it was right there when with a few bacteria encapsulated, they could land on Mars. And only extremophile prokaryotes, and there's bacteria that love extreme conditions like radiation and cold and low pressure and low amounts of oxygen. Maybe some chemotrophs, chemosynthetic bacteria that maybe could find something like methane to feed on because that has energy, or sulfur dioxide like the ones that live at the bottom of our ocean, or even if they were photosynthetic. Sunshine hits Mars not as strong as here, but it does. So if we find bacteria alive or even fossilized evidence on Mars, we have to admit it could be bacteria that came here from Earth. Bacteria could get to Mars on the solar wind, but dinosaurs and people could not. So it would actually prove, if we find bacteria on Mars, that 3.8 billion years ago, really 4,000 years, 6,000 years ago, that bacteria could survive on Mars. But given some bacteria and as much time as Earth has had, those bacteria would never evolve into giraffes and pterodactyls and people, and flying squirrels, Sciurus neomus, or anything else. Just stay bacteria, like our bacteria always have. You keep thinking, Dr. J.